What's cracking, everybody? My name's Scott, and this is the show where we talk all about what's going on with the Seattle Kraken. Now, it has been a few weeks since we did one of these, and that's because, as expected, news has been a little bit slow around the Kraken over the last month or so. But there still have been some things that have come out in that time. Plus, I thought it would probably be nice for everybody to have a little bit more of an extra break from all of that Russell Wilson trade rumors and conversation that's been going on. So, let's get to the Kraken. Real quick, if you haven't yet and you find yourself enjoying this video at any point and you'd like to do that kind of thing, the subscribe button down there can probably help you out. Now, we're actually going to start with a piece of news that is not specific to the Seattle Kraken, but it certainly is the biggest piece of news to come out from the NHL over the last couple of weeks. And that is the NHL's new partnership with ESPN starting next season. It's a 7-year deal with ESPN and fellow Disney-owned broadcasting company ABC that will earn the NHL $400 million per year, which is already twice what they were getting from NBC in their previous deal. In exchange, ESPN and ABC will get coverage of 4 of the next 7 Stanley Cup finals, as well as half of all of the playoffs in each of those 7 seasons, including one of the 2 conference finals series. They will also get 25 exclusive nationally televised games on ESPN and ABC during the regular season, as well as 75 more games that will be exclusively streamed on ESPN+, where they will also be streaming any playoff games that they have access to. And to show even more clearly the emphasis that ESPN is putting on streaming specifically with ESPN+, as a part of this deal, NHL TV will cease to exist, and its services will merge into ESPN+, at least in the United States anyway. Now, regardless of what you think about ESPN and how clickbaity and somewhat reliant on hot takes a lot of their content has become over the last few years, this is very good news for the NHL and definitely sets them up very well for the next few years. And that's because even outside of the fact that the NHL will be getting significantly more money from this deal than they were from their previous exclusive deal with NBC, this gets them back on ESPN. And again, love or hate ESPN, they are very much still the biggest sports media producer out there. And especially for a league that's been struggling to grow, or at least grow at the same rate as the other professional sports leagues in North America for the last, decade and a half or so since that lockout missed season, the more eyes they can get on them, the better. And having a TV deal with ESPN should certainly be able to provide that, because even outside of having the games on a couple of extra networks with ABC included, this means that ESPN will be doing a lot more NHL coverage, especially than what we've seen since 2004. And while that may not make a very big difference to diehard or longtime NHL fans, it will make a very big difference when it comes to attracting more casual fans to hockey. And for the NHL in particular, this could not have come at a better time, as they, as well as the other leagues, will be looking to recover over the next couple of years from the billions of dollars of lost revenue over the last year with COVID. Plus, to go back to just straight up the money that NHL will be making from this deal, even outside of the fact that this ESPN deal alone will be earning them twice as much per year as what they were getting from NBC, it's not even going to be the entirety of what they will be getting, as there still is one more package that will be going to either NBC or Fox Sports. But if you are looking for a little bit more of a Kraken-specific tie into all of this, more than just the health of the league as a whole, then I would look towards that streaming emphasis that they have with ESPN+. Because if you are one of the people who, like me, was very frustrated with the news of Root Sports because of their lack of streaming options, the emphasis that ESPN is putting on streaming could definitely start to put a little bit more pressure on networks like Root Sports that don't have any such options. Now, that probably still won't happen with Root Sports in the next year, maybe even 2 or 3, but it's still something to maybe look forward to and consider. Moving on from the TV side of things, though, recently the Kraken did also announce who their radio partner was going to be, and to the surprise of not a whole lot of people, they chose KJR. So if for some, cable-related reason or maybe some other reason you don't have access to some of the games on TV and you still want to be able to listen along on radio to Everett Fitzhugh and his calls of the game, you'll be able to find those on KJR radio. Beyond just the games though, this does also mean that if you like listening to talk radio and you want some Kraken content, you're probably going to be getting more of that from KJR than you will from, say, 710 ESPN. I mean, ultimately that's up to them to decide, but you definitely get more as far as the Mariners are concerned from 710 because they're the ones that cover those games. So I would expect a kind of similar thing with the Kraken and KJR. Of course, you probably will get mostly Seahawks content with both, but still. Now, like our last episode of What's Kraken, it's not all going to be good news this time either, because another piece of news that the Kraken dropped recently that got a fair number of people a bit riled up online was the announcement of Coors Beer as their domestic partner. And when it comes to the annoyance and in some cases straight up anger over this particular piece of news, I'm with you in this. If I wanted to overpay for flavored water, I would just stick with LaCroix. But what a lot of people seem to be reading in this headline that I myself didn't see was the word exclusive, because, well, this does mean that Coors will get their branding all over Climate Pledge Arena, and they will be providing the majority of the beer in the stadium. It doesn't mean that they will be the only ones providing beer there, or it doesn't necessarily mean that anyway. Now, yes, another piece of this news was that Hop Valley will be the official craft beer partner of the team, but again, it doesn't necessarily mean that if you want craft beer, Hop Valley is going to be your only option. And obviously, Hop Valley was going to be the one they picked because it is a Coors-owned company. And the reason I say that is because a large part of the reason that I saw a lot of people upset with this particular piece of news is that through and through, the Kraken have continuously said that they want to establish themselves as part of the community, and in so doing, help build up local companies, and in this case would be local brewers like, say, Fremont or maybe Pike or some of the other local brewers around, which there are plenty of. Now, first of all, none of the local brewing companies are going to be able to put up anywhere near the same amount of money that Coors is going to be able to for something like a sponsor and all the advertisement around the stadium that comes with it. And while the Kraken will continue to do their best to be part of the community, this is still a business that does need to make money, so they're not just going to be giving away big things like a beer sponsorship for free. But what, again, I didn't see in any of the language the Kraken were using was the word exclusive, whether that was for the craft sponsorship of Hop Valley or for the domestic sponsorship of Coors. So in the end, when it comes to beer options at a Kraken game, I don't think that we're going to be limited to just Coors or Hop Valley. I do think this will end up looking a lot more like what we see at T-Mobile Park, where once again, Coors and Hop Valley are the partners there, and they do get their signage and their beers at every place where you can find a beer. But you can also get some more local options in certain areas like Mac and Jack's or Irish Death or even Fremont and some others. Which, yes, would certainly open the door for Fremont to sell its Sky Kraken at games, which I'm sure would go pretty well. Now again, when it comes to local brewers, getting in the door is certainly not going to be free, so especially coming out of a pandemic where some of them may have been struggling just to keep their doors open, things may not be as easy as just, hey, we want to sell beer at the games, can we? So give it time and a little patience. But again, I don't think you're just stuck to Coors, Coors Light, or whatever Hop Valley has to offer. But again, this is a pro sporting event we're talking about, so even when it does come to beer options, they're still likely to be pretty expensive, especially compared to what you might pay at home or at a local bar. And that brings us to the final thing that I wanted to talk about, and that was to give a little bit of an update to a video I did a few months ago on the potential head coach options for the Kraken, as they still have not made any indications of somebody they're looking to pick. Ultimately, to me, Gerard Gallant, who I mentioned in that video, which I will link down below, is still available and still very much the best option. But if he isn't the guy they go for, or he ends up going somewhere else, then there are a couple of other options that have had some updates and a couple of new options that people have been talking about. Well, I mentioned in my previous video that Gerard Gallant was my favorite. Mike Babcock was the one that I kind of mentioned as a name that people were talking about, was the one I wanted to see least in Seattle. Recently, he did get a job as the head coach of Saskatchewan University, so I do think it's a little bit less likely that he does end up here, although I didn't really think it was all that likely in the first place. Now, sure, if Seattle or another NHL team came calling, I'm sure Babcock would probably be willing to take that over Saskatchewan University, even though he just signed there. But I'm assuming by him taking that job, it probably means that he wasn't hearing a whole lot of interest from the NHL, so I think we're pretty safe there. But there are a couple of names I didn't mention in that video that have been coming up more recently, one of which being Claude Julien, who was recently fired as the head coach of the Montreal Canadiens. Julien has 19 years of NHL coaching experience so far to this point in his career, having started and to this point ended his careers both in Montreal, with a large chunk of time spent in Boston as their head coach between those two stints. And it was during that time in Boston that he got his lone Stanley Cup victory as a head coach with the 2011 Bruins. And then 2 years later was still the head coach of the team when they went back to the finals, although they would end up losing. So he definitely does have plenty of NHL head coaching experience, including experience winning it all, which are both things that I'm sure the Kraken would like in a head coach. But there is one reason that a lot of people have pointed to that they may not want to see Julien as Seattle's first head coach. And that is also maybe what got him fired in Montreal, because while he does have a lot of experience more recently, he's got a bit of a reputation for, while a team is going well, things tend to go well. But as soon as things start to not go as well for a team, he gets a little bit hard-headed and doesn't really adapt in the way that you would like to see a head coach adapt. Which can definitely be seen in Montreal's season so far to this point, because while they did get off to a hot start, coming off of a surprising run in the playoffs last year, once they got into a little bit of trouble partway through what the season has been so far, they weren't really able to dig their way out and started just kind of falling off. And while having a coach that has a clear vision and knows what he wants could be, again, a good thing for a team coming together for the first time, the inability to adapt that plan when it doesn't go the way you want it to is probably not something that's going to be very good for a team that will be needing to adapt over the course of its first couple of years. The other name that started to come up a little bit more often recently is Rob Brind'Amour, who is currently the head coach of the Carolina Hurricanes. Now, that is a team that is doing pretty well so far to this point in the season, to say the least, and that tends to be the type of scenario that does not see a head coach leave it. However, he has yet to sign an extension to his contract, which does expire at the end of this year. Now, while personally I would be more than happy to see Brind'Amour announced as the head coach in Seattle, there is at least one big drawback to it, and that is that he would have to finish out the season in Carolina, and at least as things stand right now, that could mean a deep playoff run. So he wouldn't be joining the team until just before the expansion draft, which means he wouldn't really be as in the loop as far as what the Kraken are looking for when it comes to that. Plus, on top of all that, I don't necessarily think that it's all that likely that Carolina lets him leave. I mean, sure, there's nothing they can do to force him to sign a new contract, so I guess anything could happen. But again, with a team that is on the rise and starting to see better and better play with Brind'Amour as the head of that, they probably will do everything they can to make sure a re-signing does happen. So in the end, I guess we're pretty much still exactly where we were a few months ago with the head coaching situation for the Kraken, with Gallant still probably being the favorite, and the team still maintaining complete radio silence on the subject. For what it's worth, though, we are right about in the same time of year that the Golden Knights were when they signed Gallant to be their first head coach leading into their first season. And even with the current NHL season looking considerably different than the one the Golden Knights were in during this point in their process, it could happen at any time now. Real quick though, before we wrap up, there is one last thing that I forgot to mention in the last one of these videos that I wanted to throw in there. And that is, speaking of local companies and being a part of the community, the Kraken were given the opportunity by Wizards of the Coast to spoil one of their cards in their recent set, which I thought was a pretty cool gesture from Wizards of the Coast. Plus, it's a game I enjoy, and the card itself was very clearly made for the Kraken, being named Icebreaker Kraken, so it's kind of cool. And yes, I know liking Magic the Gathering might make me a nerd, but you see how much I talk about a hockey team that hasn't even played a game yet, so is that really a surprise? Anyway, if you have made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoy this video, there are buttons for that kind of stuff down below, and I would love to hear your thoughts on any of this news down in the comments section. Otherwise, stay safe out there and be good to each other. Peace!